When I picked up this David Brown 990 Selectomatic, it was in a pretty sorrow state. It had dents and rust all over the place, and I wanted to make sure that it was working mechanically right before I would actually do all the cosmetic work and the new electrical installation. So I checked all the liquids, I got fresh engine oil, and now it was time to just refresh all the liquids basically. You can see how dirty the oil is. I also removed the oil filter, and that is based on an insert, and I just got a new one. There's also a little seal inside the engine block, so make sure you change that one if you ever do this work. Putting the new one in, and then you grease that up a little bit. I like clean work, so I cleaned all the parts, and here you have the air filter. It's a combined mesh, steel mesh with oil, very efficient filters. We clean it all out, and we've given a fresh coat of oil on the mesh and also inside the pot. And then it was time to take the oil pan off, because inside you have a small oil filter fitted to the oil pump, and people often forget this. The oil pan itself, well, it had a lot of gunk in it, as you could see. We cleaned all that out and then we reinstalled it. And here we're putting the new oil filter up and tighten it up, and it's always a good idea to put the date up. And now we're adding the fresh oil to it and just double checking the level, never overfill. And then it was time for the diesel filters, and I have two of them, but look at that, see all the gunk. I don't know how long ago they ever changed this. By the way, I also rinsed out the gas tank because I expected to be the same amount of gunk in it. It's not in this video. And then it was time to start bleeding. Now that it started, I was quite happy. So now it was time for the actual gearbox and the hydraulics. And therefore, you need to remove the hydraulics filter underneath the car. Well, I should say tractor, not a car. It's a bit of an oily job. It's a little bit of a mess. And you can see the filter takes apart. There's one part you need to keep, that's the left-hand part, and then you can get a new filter like this one, a new gasket. And of course, before installing it, you want to take up all the gunk that's on the tractor itself. And here we're having the new filter in and just closing it back up. It doesn't take that long to do, so I don't know why people don't do it. And now it's time for a test ride. Tractor starts and runs smoothly, so I'm happy with the mechanical results. And now it was time for some of the body work, because it had quite a bit of body work. Here you see that I already welded up the lower part. It had dents all over, the fenders were in a sorrow state, they had rust, the dashboard was awful. So it was time to take it apart. The front grille goes out. I was able to recover that one. And here I'm just peeling off some pieces of plastic and trying to hammer out the biggest bumps that we have on the bonnet. Taking the bonnet off because I'm going to shot blast it. And here you see me shot blasting the bonnet. By the way, I shot blasted the entire bonnet. I'm recovering the identity plates and as much as I can, like the lenses and so on, and in an effort to recover them. And you can see the sorrow state of that fender. I straightened it up with some pliers and some metal bars and a little bit of muscle power. And that worked pretty smoothly, not really a hard job to do. And at the end, finish it off with a dolly. Cutting out the rust, welding in a new plate. And I'm doing this spot welded in different areas. And then at the end, I fill them all up. This is to avoid distortion of the panel. And then it was time to really take the fenders off, and that was a pain in the butt because one of the bolts did not work, and at the end it broke off. But I did got it out, and believe me or not, I have it framed on the wall. Fenders were also shot blasted and patches were made, and the inside was coated anti-rust. And here you have one of those patches which I had to straighten up on the stretcher or the shrinker, and then weld it in place and sand it down. Now the fender has been treated, and the first thing we're going to do is to apply a base coat, a primer.
And to paint the fender and the dashboard, I'm going to be using tractor paint, which is a very specific paint.
And here we go, mixing the paint up with the hardener, so the paint is resistant to scratches. It's harder. And then the fun part, putting the decals up. I always love that one. You know, it's like the crown on your job. Placing back the ID cards or the ID plaques, and I got some nice red lights, and I was in doubt if I should place it on top of the hood or actually on the sides. And then it was time really to sort out the big mess of the wiring loom, the switches and the instruments. So I got a new wiring loom, but it didn't fit 100%. All the switches and all the gauges were tested and all the sensors on a bench, making sure they all worked. The alternator was verified that it does charge, because originally this has a dynamo, but we have an alternator on it. Starter motor was tested, all that was fine. We're creating a new fuse box, and the new gauges, or the reward gauges are now going in. I just taped it up so I can flip it over and tighten everything down, and here you see the final dashboard. And then it was time for the lifting arms, and you can see we got a lot of play there, and the ball joints that we have on the lifting arms. I had to make some new parts on the lathe, but before I did that, I welded in the new ball joints, because the attachments I have are of a different size than what I had on the lifting arms, so I had to rebuild this. And here you see the old part and the new part, and I'm turning here some new pieces that I can put into the lifting arms with a pin so it doesn't get loose. Very handy. And then it was time to really clean it and then shot blast it, because now it was time to start painting. Removing first of all the wheels, they are damn heavy, so I recommend to do this with 2 people. But once that was all done and everything was masked up, I could actually paint the entire tractor, and it's this dark brown gray color. I do like it, okay, but that's probably a personal preference. And now I could run up the remaining cabling. I had to take the steering wheel off to install the dashboard, and then I had to, run up all the cables throughout the entire tractor and to the dashboard, and then tie everything down so it's very well secured and in place. There's a lot of testing involved. It's not complicated if you take your time. There's a circuit diagram with it, so that is not that hard to do. And here I'm just checking the gauges and everything else, and that seemed to be working fine. So now I could lock the dashboard finally in place, install the lights and the DB logo. Fenders go back on, and now I could work on the lenses of the lights that I recovered, trying to clean them. But the best way to get more glaze on them so they could shine again was actually polishing them on the polishing wheel. Here I'm installing the rear lights. Yes, those are new lights. They are not original. I didn't have enough original ones. But here you see the final result. We also got some new tires. We got a new seat. So I think this tractor is looking pretty good. The whole lifting mechanism now works on the plaques, so the ID tags are back in place. I still have paperwork on this tractor, by the way, which is very rare for an old tractor. And here you have a little bit of an overview on how the tractor looks like. Instruments are all working. Now, once the tractor comes on the farm, it's here to be used. So I'm using it to trim the hedges and pull some loads with it. It's not going to sit in a dry, all fancy showroom and get polished once a week. That's not what's going to happen, but it will receive a lot of tender love and care through its remaining lifetime on the farm, and it probably will outlast me by probably many, many years, because these tractors from David Brown are very solid. This tractor starts at the second turn of the engine, even if it's cold and been sitting there for a long time. So here you see a bit of an overview on how the tractor looks like. I know some people will say, oh Steve, the wheels are not having the right color, they should be white, I believe. I know, or red, but I will do that later. I haven't had the time yet to do the wheels. That was not that important because they were in a pretty good shape. So, thank you for viewing, folks, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.